Welcome to Great Food. You know, Jackie, it's been almost a year since the Iowa Restaurant Association has been sponsoring my segment, and we've been bringing in these great chefs who have given us wonderful cooking tips. And I thought it was high time we do a roundup of just a few of these chefs, these tips, and that we can all bring home. They're not super chefy hard tips, but they're sort of things that any of us can appreciate to bring to our cooking.
Things we want to remember is things that we can use in our own kitchen, but it'll just, you know, turn it up
a notch. Exactly. Make it easier and better. And you know, the other thing is, like, for me, when I'm going to do something really super fancy schmancy, or when I crave something super fancy schmancy, I'm going to have a chef cook it. But when I'm cooking at home, I'm going to, look for ways to make things easy. So this is
speaking of fancy schmancy,
yeah,
let's start off with the hot dogs.
Exactly. This is Chris Hartman from Capitol Pub and Hot Dog. He was a great guest. He came in on 4th of July, and there he is. I'm wearing my little 4th of July outfit.
Yes.
And he, he did a Chicago dog for us, and it was so good. But one of the things I noticed was he only simmered the hot dogs. He didn't boil them. And he said it takes like 20 minutes to get a hot dog in boiling or in simmering, not boiling water, for it to be as good as it's going to be.
So simmering, it's still in water, it's just not completely...
Well, it's not boiling. It's not actually I should have covered these more, but it's not boiling. You're not seeing those bubbles break. It's simmering. It's just, a few simmering bubbles. I've got this a little low because they've been cooking. Otherwise, your hot dogs are going to get they're going to get tough. Or they might split. You know how hot dogs sometimes split?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so this is the way, this is really something I've learned. And I don't cook hot dogs a lot, but when I do, I give myself a little extra time and I simmer them.
But just prepared for it taking a little bit longer time. But that always
don't microwave
makes things better.
Yeah, it makes them real. I know we've always done that, but it kind of makes them tough.
The easy fix. Okay.
So the other thing, toss the pepper grinder. Woo! Toss it out. Or I should say, just put it on your table. Put it, because at the table it's fine, but if you're trying to cook with pepper, which we all do, it's much better to have I've noticed so many chefs bring in freshly ground pepper that's already ground exactly the way they like it. Now, this is from Allspice in the East Village. They have it fresh all the time, and you just can use just a little, exactly where it's going to go on the plate. Where if you use a pepper grinder, it kind of goes all over. You don't know where it's going to go.
It's kind of random.
It's random, and it's also random sizes. You get little pieces of dust, you get big pieces that sort of, can really add more spice than you want. And so I have found that the pepper grinder is great for at the table, salads, something that people really can do it on their own. But if you're cooking, I really like the precision of using my own.
Something like that. Okay.
Exactly. Now, I have seen so many chefs come in with this fish spatula, and it's after I saw chefs cooking with them, I was so impressed. And Enosh Kelly from Bistro Montage was one of the many chefs who came in, but he was using his fish spat for duck. He was using it to turn the duck, to turn things. It's a wonderful precision instrument because it has this it's slightly sharp but very thin edge. So when you're trying to get under things like cookies on a cookie sheet, or fish, or anything you're frying, you don't want to leave the fried bits in the pan. You want to get underneath the fried bits. This thing has changed my cooking life. Really? Yeah. So I was so glad that Enosh and others introduced me to what they call on the cooking line a fish spat.
I was going to say, what would this be called if we went to a store and asked for it?
It would be called a fish spatula, but in restaurant
spatula.
But in restaurant lingo, it's a fish spat. But if you buy one, you will be using it for so much more than fish. I love this thing. So, all right.
Okay.
And then,
good to know.
Yeah. And then another thing was a lot of chefs have been, every time they cook with parsley a lot more than you would think. I mean, you're always thinking people cook with basil and thyme and rosemary and all these other fresh herbs, which they do, but I'm amazed at how often they cook with parsley. And parsley is one of those things that many of us growing up would only put on the plate just as a garnish.
My mom always told me to eat it so it'd give me good breath at the end of a meal.
Exactly. we all kind of grew up with that, and parsley was just sort of something you just, was just an afterthought.
Right.
But I love parsley because you can add a lot of color to a dish, but it's a mild ingredient so that you really almost can't overuse it, but it adds freshness no matter what. No matter what you're cooking, it will add a jolt of freshness. And you can use it copiously without without overdoing it. And every chef I know uses a lot of parsley, which I thought was cool. I thought it was just an interesting tip. So,
what would like a serving be of parsley? Just ripping off?
well, I mean, I just
sprig?
use it. It's really to taste, and like I said, you can't overdo it. I always chop it up pretty fine, and that's what I
Okay.
did with these meatballs. And you can see it just added a little color.
An example of something you can use it for.
And see how it added color in the meatballs. Now, if you would have tried that with thyme, you would have had way too much thyme in your meatballs.
Right.
I mean, it would have just been overpowering. So it's a way to add something to the dish. And the other thing I love about parsley is it's inexpensive. I mean, this is 99 cents.
Right.
Versus you get those little clamshells for like $3, and you really only need a teaspoon or two of other herbs. So I have this in my refrigerator all the time. It's great. I mean, I use it all the time, and especially like if I'm using an herb that I'm doing a recipe that calls for an herb that I don't have, I'll just substitute
throw in parsley.
It'll work.
Great tip.
I know it'll really work. So I saved the best for last. Ben Nelson from Splash came in one day, and he was pouring some wonderful sparkling wines. And I noticed that instead of putting the sparkling wines in a flute, which, I mean, we do
What we're
very
used
often.
to, right?
We're used to. It's celebratory. It's pretty. I mean, who doesn't love a flute, right? He was putting the sparkling wines in a regular wine glass.
Really?
And sparkling wine is wine. And the thing is it has aromas and flavors that need to develop like any other wine.
But wouldn't you be losing the bubbles, the fun bubbles, as much? Because it feels like it's contained here where it's more open in that type of glass.
Indeed, that is why those flutes became so popular. And I asked Ben Nelson the same thing. I'm like, well, this is all about preserving the bubbles. And he said, you're not drinking fast enough. I thought that was good advice. So,
That's a lesson.
I mean, the point is like try to smell in that. And, you might be able to
You
get
might
some.
be able to, but it's not the same with a normal
is when you
glass.
can really get a glass. So
yeah, you don't see too many people with champagne glasses going.
Exactly, you really don't. Yeah.
Smelling it or looking at it too much. They're just there to enjoy it. But you're saying enjoy it in a new way.
Exactly.
Actually, in a wine glass.
In a wine glass. So cheers to a great year of Iowa Restaurant Association
cheers.
and the chefs they've brought in.
This has been absolutely wonderful. Great food. You can always count on it right here on KCWI, and more to come. We'll be right back with more.